Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam here on DZRJ and RJTV. It's 2023, and we are back for yet another year on the radio, cable TV, and of course, Facebook. Don't forget to check us out on the DZRJ Facebook page and subscribe so you can be a part of the DZRJ news world. Now, on our little talk show, we talk about what's going on outside the Philippines so you can be informed and you can be impressive of all the knowledge that you have about international current events. Now, we don't always talk about all the major news, just what I think are the most interesting stories. This week, we'll be, of course, talking about the insane circus that ensued the U.S. Congress this week and the new congressman there that lied about everything. Also, is Putin dying? The rumors are flowing like vodka at a Russian birthday party. Go to one of those and you will know what I mean. Also, Tokyo is giving people money to leave. Also, some wild health news and our own look at sports. But before we get to the news, I wanted to talk about this one guy who I personally think is hilarious. Comedian 𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀. Now, 𝗡𝗲𝘀, in case you don't know, is a Filipino-American comedian. If you're a Filipino and you don't know him, you should be ashamed because he is very funny. He tells jokes about his Filipino mom. It's hysterical. Well, he has had some rough times lately. His movie that came out Easter Sunday was okay. It did not make the money I think they had hoped it would. Of course, the good thing was that the movie was even made at all. I know 𝗡𝗀𝘀 shopped that idea for years until supposedly Steven Spielberg got interested in him. But in the end, the critics did not take it so well. It almost seemed as if the director tried to water it down so much for the Western audiences that it lost much of what makes 𝗡𝗀𝘀 so funny. Then, of course, his girlfriend, Chelsea Handler, broke up with him. Now, how he could stand her in the first place is amazing. I mean, she's really funny, and I loved her show before, but 𝗡𝗀𝘀 is such a nice guy that makes fun of people, but in a nice way, and she is not. Like I said, she is funny, but I think she was just really waiting to see how the movie did. That is speculation there. Anyway, the reason I'm talking about 𝗡𝗀𝘀 is an article my friend sent me about him this week. He donated 1.5 million pesos back in August to the National High School there in Bacolod to get a road built. Well, the 589-meter road is finished, and 𝗡𝗀𝘀 himself came all the way to Bacolod for the inauguration. Supposedly the megastar from the U.S. rode around in a jeepney to get from different places there in Bacolod. But it didn't stop there. He also donated money to the ongoing construction of a library at the local elementary school. So my congratulations to the comedian 𝗡𝗀𝘀, making a small dot on the map a much better place in the world. I just love hearing stories like this about successful Filipinos abroad, especially 𝗡𝗀𝘀, who seems like a real down-to-earth kind of guy. Just some advice for 𝗡𝗀𝘀: stay away from the tall white women. I can tell you, eventually your neck is going to get sore. So let's get to the news. In U.S. politics, it's always something, isn't there? I mean, if it's not an insurrection to overthrow the government or the ex-president having lunch with a Jew-hating Holocaust denier, then it's got to be something else. And this week, it was something else. Now, as you know, Republicans won the majority in the House of Representatives in the midterm elections. We talked about that at great length. Yes, we all expected it. However, what we didn't expect is that it would be so close. I mean, Donald Trump predicted a massive wave of Republican wins because of him. But as many Republicans have said, thanks to Trump, they did not win as many seats as they had hoped for. But anyway, they still won. And that's always mattered to a guy named Kevin McCarthy. He's been stuck as the minority leader in the House of Representatives after Trump was elected president and the Republicans lost the House to the Democrats. So this speakership is all he has talked about since then. It was that he worked his whole life to get the gavel that Nancy Pelosi has had for so long. Now, even though Kevin's popularity among the U.S. citizens is not very good, he still knew that the new Republican majority, he was a shoo-in for the Speaker of the House. But like Cinderella's stepsisters, that shoe doesn't always fit like you had hoped. This week, Kevin had some trouble getting support from his own party. Electing a Speaker of the House is usually a formality, but this is the new post-Trump Republican Party. To start, we have to look back at the insurrection after Trump sent the Trump mob to the Capitol who vowed to kill the vice president and the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Kevin came out and said that this was all Trump's fault and that he was the one that sent the mob to the Capitol. Trump, he did this. That's what he said. But then a few weeks later, Kevin went down to Trump's lair in Florida and realized that he still needs Trump to retain the popularity over his base. So Kevin kissed the so-called big orange butt of King Trump, and all was forgotten, and McCarthy was back to being a forever Trumper. So here we are now. Kevin is about to be sworn in as Speaker of the House. Just a procedural process. It's really not a big deal, right? I mean, the Republicans are in the majority, right? Yes, that's right. However, several of the Republicans want power too. They want to be in the news. They want to be on the conservative talk shows and be the heads of the committee, run some of the show. Now, these people are from what's called the Freedom Caucus, most right-wing extreme conservatives in the party, most of which are the ones that supported the insurrection and voted to overturn the election. The most diehard Trumpers in Congress. Seems odd that they would be the ones holding up the vote, but, well, maybe not. This group, which are known as the Never Kevins, have said they love Trump but will never vote for Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. I know, go figure. Well, Kevin was like, I don't care. Screw you guys. We will have the vote anyway. I mean, Kevin had already moved into the Speaker's office. That's pretty funny, huh? So they held the vote, and 19 Republicans voted against Kevin. He must hold it to only 4 votes against in order to win. So they held it again. And the next time, he lost by 20 votes. So they voted again and again and again. 3 elections the first day, 3 elections the second day, then 5 on the third day. Kevin lost every single one. The only time something like this has ever happened this bad in Congress was 164 years ago. I mean, you know, voting against your own party this many times. But this is the post-Trump world in the U.S., and the extreme Trumpers will do anything to be on TV. It's like a game show. They keep running the same game over and over, hoping a different one will come. I mean, Trump was a game show host, right? His past experience before president was being and running a game show. In fact, in the voting on Thursday, Matt Gaetz, the Trump guy under investigation for having sex with underage girls, voted for Trump as Speaker of the House. How crazy was that? Like I said, it's either a circus or a game show. So as of Thursday, Kevin McCarthy had lost 11 times. So what did he do? He decided to negotiate with these characters, but in doing so, he basically had to give up all the powers that a Speaker of the House has. First of all, he had to agree that anyone in the House, even just one person, can call a vote of no confidence at any time against him. Second, they want to change the power of the main older House representatives and divide up the power more equally with the little to no power representatives. These younger, sometimes crazy people want to be able to decide what is voted on in the House of Representatives. This is huge because they could start immediately with investigations into anyone, such as like President Biden and his son Hunter Biden. Those two have been investigated up and down and back and forth. But these Freedom Caucus dudes want to do it again and again. Basically, if they don't like you, then they will call for an investigation onto you. Not unlike what Trump used to do. They want subpoena authority and want to be able to do things like ban national vaccine mandates. Currently, members of the Freedom Caucus are rarely able to speak on the House floor because they are, in many cases, crazy. They just end up embarrassing themselves in the Republican Party. Marjorie Taylor Greene was banned from all committees after making comments that endangered other members of Congress. But this is what they want. Not just a seat at the table, but a seat with authority at the table. This could mean that one of these people could be on a committee in which they could make appeals that America should be closed to non-U.S. citizens. They could call a vote to have the border sealed off. They basically have nothing to lose and everything to gain. The Congress cannot take up session until the Speaker is picked. No one can be sworn in. It's like the U.S. Congress doesn't even exist. Well, anyway, they had another vote on Friday, and McCarthy was able to cut down on the votes against him by a bit, but still not enough. There was a decision to move the vote to Monday. However, very late at night, past midnight, McCarthy said he had the votes. This is where a real fight almost broke out on the House floor. I mean, someone's about to take a swing at Matt Gaetz, just like many Americans would like to. But in the end, McCarthy squeaked out by having people against vote present instead of for him, and now he is Speaker of the House. Just realize Kevin McCarthy will get his dream job, but at the cost of the power that's supposed to come with it. He will now have to play nice to some of the lunacy that has taken over the Republican Party. Right now, there are several in the Republican Party that are there mostly just to be famous. They don't seem to really have any real policy in mind, just get thousands of likes on TikTok and get on TV. Many of the Trump wannabes want to be, but they can't, because no one can really do Trump, only Trump. Right now, many are very worried, especially in the Senate. McCarthy gave up so much power to these people that this might make the U.S. Congress ungovernable. For instance, they could purposely derail budgets and cause shutdowns. What if they decided to vote on defaulting on the debt, which is something they have said that they may do? The first order of business, they have threatened to repeal the funding of the Internal Revenue Service that was put in place to catch high-end tax cheats. They want to go after Anthony Fauci. They want to make a case against the withdrawal of Afghanistan. Many subjects that have already been looked into over and over. Even many Republicans are worried about what this crazy bunch in the Freedom Caucus might end up trying to do. And what can Kevin McCarthy do about it? I mean, all they now need is one vote in order to open an investigation into him and have a vote of no confidence. Speaking of strange people in the Republican Party, what are they going to do about this guy, George Santos? He is someone who is all over the front page this week. He's an incoming Republican congressman who was voted in the midterm elections. He is a new congressman from the Republican district in New York, and he has a problem. See, when you're a politician and you lie about something, people sort of expect it. But what if the politician lies about everything? He is the first openly gay Jewish representative. Okay, let's start right there. First, his gayness is in question because he was married to a woman until 2019, which he never disclosed. And is he really Jewish? Seems there's a big question about his heritage there. But let's get to some of the more easy ones first. He said he worked at Goldman Sachs, yet they have no record of him ever working there, nor anyone ever saw him there at the SALT private equity conference, which he claimed to be a part of. He said he was an asset manager at Citigroup. However, they can't find any record of him working there. And besides, Citigroup sold off their asset management in 2005, which was 5 years before he claims he was ever there or even ever graduated college. He says he owns a charity called Friends of Pets United. The charity says they don't know who he is, nor have they ever gotten a donation from him. He claimed to be a landlord in New York, however, did not list any properties he owned in his disclosure forms. The New York Times went to address the address that they got from his voter registration, and no one at that address had ever heard of him. They later found out that he actually lives outside of his own district. He claimed he went to the famous Horace Mann High School there in New York, but there's no record of ever being there. He claimed he had a 4-year degree from Baruch College. However, there is no record of him being there. He claimed he went to New York University. However, there is no record of him ever being there. He reported a $750,000 income and $1 million from a company which is now dissolved. He was the regional director of a Harvey Capital, which is accused of running a $17 million Ponzi scheme. He claimed 4 of his employees were killed in the gay nightclub massacre in Orlando. None of the 49 victims associated with that massacre are with any of his firms. He said he got the strength from his mother, who narrowly escaped the World Trade Center on 9/11, where she was working that day. Of course, there is no record of her ever working there. He later claimed she died on 9/11, however, later tweeted he is celebrating his mother's death in 2016. Okay, now back to whether he is Jewish. He claimed his grandparents fled Jewish persecution in Belgium during World War II. However, after looking it up, his grandparents were from Brazil and were born in Brazil prior to the Nazis. His great-grandfather was an immigrant to Brazil in 1884. When cornered on his Jewish heritage, which he claimed to have, he explained that when he said it, that he was Jewish, he meant that he was Jew-ish, but not actually of Jewish descent. He was married to a woman until 2019. However, he claimed to be married to a man. However, there's no record of a marriage to a man. When Kevin McCarthy was asked about this guy, he had no comment. First of all, McCarthy needed this guy to vote for him as Speaker. The vote for Speaker of the House came down to just a few handful of votes, so McCarthy couldn't badmouth him yet. And McCarthy is well known for being friends with you when he needs something. But even so, this guy is a liar in the biggest sense of the word, and he's just been voted into the Republican Party, which just went through one of the most humiliating moments in party history. Like I said before, this is the post-Republican Trump Party. What are they going to do in the next 2 years? That is, until the presidential election, in which Trump could head their party or very well create his own party. I'm sure we will have a whiskey bottle full of what the Republicans will be doing and saying and pushing over the next year. So get ready to have a few drinks. I will be here to regurgitate it all to you here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and RJTV. Well, the war in Ukraine is coming up on a year very soon. Both sides are saying that they will be the winner in the end. Of course, the way things are going, no one is really going to win. But as far as I can see, it looks like eventually they will all be forced to sit down to a table and negotiate this one out. Just reminds me of that trench warfare in World War II. One side will get many casualties, and the next week the other side will, but neither side ever seems to get the upper hand. But what if something happened outside the war? Something so big, so forceful, that everything would just stop all at once. We have said before on the show that if someone were to get close enough to President Vladimir Putin to put a bullet in the back of his head, the world would all of a sudden be at peace. Well, many have speculated this could happen. However, it's very hard because Putin already knows that a huge percentage of the world wouldn't mind seeing him being assassinated by one of his own people. But as it turns out, we may not need an assassin or someone in the Kremlin looking for power. Putin may be dying on his own. There are multiple reports this week that Putin is dying of cancer. And even though he may be the richest man in the world right now, with the best medical care that money can buy, we have to remember Steve Jobs had $1 trillion company, Apple. He died of cancer. Money can't buy what we haven't invented yet. And so far, as I know, we don't have a cure for the kind of cancer they say Putin has. Now, what is the proof that Putin has cancer? Well, there has been speculation for many months now that he is suffering from something. Questions have come up about why does he travel with a cancer doctor? Lots of innuendos there. But now they are believing that soon the truth will come out, partly or mostly because of spies, which is sort of the reason why they don't tell us exactly how they know this information. Too much comes out, then the circle around Putin will eventually figure out who's talking to everybody. There have already been photos released showing track marks on Putin's hands. seeing him visibly grabbing onto the desk to stop from shaking, his very puffy face suggesting that he is on cancer-treating steroids. But all this is just speculation. You'd never know with this old KGB guy what he might be up to. Maybe this is all a trick to make us think he has cancer, so eventually we will think he doesn't when he really does. I mean, why did he cancel this year's press conference for the first time in a decade with no explanation? I think this story has become so big this week because Ukrainian intelligence got some kind of message from the inner circle. This is on top of the leak that came from the Kremlin oligarch that seems to have said that Putin has blood cancer. The recording they have appears to be legit, in which he said that Putin is much sicker than any of the Russian officials originally thought. Of course, there are reports taken from obtained medical documents that Putin has Parkinson's and pancreatic cancer. But even with the spies taking photos of documents, most of this can be explained away, which is what the Russian officials are doing now. Putin is known to love Botox, and he is a major hypochondriac, so maybe all these doctors are just to make sure he stays sexy. But of course, the Ukrainians say otherwise. The director of intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of the Ukraine said Putin has several illnesses. Yes, we fully confirm this information that Putin has cancer. He goes on, but it's not worth hoping that Putin will die tomorrow. He still has at least a few years left, whether we like it or not. That's the truth. End of quote. So, that's according to the Ukrainians. I think the problem is not if Putin dies, but if he becomes very weak. It's very clear that many around Putin are hoping that he will step down sometime soon. But of course, in my opinion, he's not going to do that. I mean, there's no real successor. No one wants to step up for the job because a guy like Putin is paranoid of everyone. And you may not live long enough to see if you ever get to step in the Putin shoes. But what if Putin were to suddenly die? I mean, what would happen? Would the war just end? Would it go back to like it was before? Would the world just become more peaceful with the death of just one man? Probably not. Not sure if you remember, but Putin's time in office was set to expire in 2024. However, Putin, of course, had the Constitution changed so that he can stay in power until 2036. But if he were to die now, like tomorrow, what would happen in Russia? Would the opposition finally have a chance to take over? This would also be a probable no. Putin has been working on his power for 20 years. He has either jailed or killed anyone that opposed him, or even has an alternative choice to him. He's been systematically changing history into one that favors him for a long, long time now. It will take time to fix something like that, especially in the people's minds. Yes, he sees protests in the streets of Russia. However, that's really just a few compared to the general population who has been fed alternative facts over and over again. The question is, will Putin's current prime minister be able to hold power even if he ends up moving into the highest office? So far, he is just known as the side guy of Putin. The Communist Party still has some power and are considered the systematic opposition to Putin. However, they almost never go against him. Mostly they are there just like Putin's opponents in an election to make it seem like there's an opposition when there really is not. Now, the real opposition is Alexei Navalny. However, after being poisoned and going to the hospital in Germany for treatment, that was to save his life. He was sentenced to 9 years in jail for leaving the country while fighting his so-called embezzlement charge. And what about the mayor of Yekaterinburg? Isn't he against Putin? Well, he also was arrested and charged with discrediting the military involvement in the Ukraine, which is punishable by 3 years in jail. So we may end up with someone even worse than Putin. The difference being that they maybe will not be as hard to remove. Right now, the Western countries are just hoping for someone who might be a kleptocrat who wants to use Russia to increase his wealth. However, will be more reasonable to work with because obviously war is not a money-making scheme. War will always cost you, and having a guy that worried about his bottom line might make for an easier time for the West. Putin is arguably the richest man in the world right now. He has already taken over anything of value in Russia, so he doesn't care about the sanctions or the loss of life of soldiers. He has more money than he could ever spend. Like I said, the next guy might be a bit more reasonable. However, whoever he is not going to suggest it for himself now. Putin is still alive, and he is the one of the most paranoid people in the world. You could be signing your own death warrant saying that you could be the next leader of Russia. So in the meantime, we will speculate. But the closer Putin moves to death, the more predictable, I believe, the more unpredictable I believe he will become. I guess it ain't over till the fat lady sings. Is she Russian? We will let you know here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and RJTV. My name is Eric Lecain. So these days, every young person out of college wants to get ahead. They see how others are making millions and living the good life in the big cities. They want that too. The province or the mountain towns are boring. You will never make it big. You will never have a good salary in a very small village. So young people after college are flocking to the bigger cities, especially the capital cities, leaving behind their parents and grandparents. The problem with that is the big cities are becoming very crowded. Streets are mobbed every day with people. You end up paying a fortune to live in a small place with 3 other roommates. You have to use jammed up public transportation systems. You can't get a seat at Starbucks. You have to wait 2 weeks to even see a doctor. You're going to the driver's license bureau. It's like being the last ant to arrive at a dropped ice cream cone. The crowd is just too big. Well, that's what's happening in Tokyo right now. There are currently more or less, 37 million people in Tokyo. Did you know that in Canada, in the entire country, there are 38 million people? In any case, there are too many people in Tokyo. They believe somewhere around 6,263 people per square kilometer. Now, did I report a few months ago that the Japanese population was shrinking? Which is true overall. They're now running programs to increase that number. However, the increase in the city of Tokyo is not because of births. It's because of people flocking there from the countryside for work. They expect Tokyo to be the largest density of population in the world by 2030. Soon the city might not be able to even support the number of people moving in. So Japan has an idea, as they always do. Give people an incentive to leave. Currently, Japan has a program to pay families to leave the city and move somewhere else in Japan. The idea is twofold. One, it will get people out of Tokyo and ease up the already overwhelmed infrastructure. And also, it puts people back in the countryside, which are currently having population problems, especially the birth rates there. There are just too many young people of birthing age leaving the province and heading to the city to work on their careers now. This leaves older people in the smaller cities, and those populations are dwindling very fast. So the government has said families in Tokyo, including single-parent families, can get 1 million yen per child if they will just leave the city. It's for kids under 18 or over 18 dependents that are still in high school. As of now, the number of people moving to the city versus moving out is around 80,000. Now, if you start to look at the fact that people in Japan live some of the longest lives in any country, you will see the possible problems that are eventually going to arise. Now, even though people live longer, the number of deaths is way outnumbering the number of births. So, as the country's population decreases, the city of Tokyo has increased in population. This is leaving older people in the provinces to be by themselves, alone. If this culture continues on this path, there will be no children in the province, just old people waiting to die. In a way, they are making the city so overcrowded. They have simply just seen lately some towns in the provinces just disappearing. A place called Nagoro had to shut down its school because not enough children were left to attend it. The youngest person in the whole city is 50 years old. So in any case, If you are a single person living in the city for at least 5 years, you can get 600,000 yen or 4,500 US dollars to leave. And if you're a couple, you can get 1,000,000 yen, around $7,700. So now you can still work in Tokyo online. However, you must live in a town outside of Tokyo. In 2021, 1,184 households decided to take advantage of this offer. And if you have kids, you can get close to $2,500 per kid. So in Japan, this policy is now to move away and have children. And if you do this, we will pay you. Not so bad to be Japanese these days. This is Lecain on the World News Jam. American football. It's an odd sport if you think about it. You need all kinds of equipment, helmets, shoulder pads, knee pads, butt pads, cups. Don't want to forget about the cups. It's a game primarily played with the hands, not the foot. But they decided to name it football, which is also the name of the most famous other sport in the world, soccer, which is a term used in the U.S. because they have a sport named football. Go figure. Now, once you get around all the crazy rules of American football and the flow of the game, it's really one of the most violent sports ever conceived. First of all, there's all that equipment that you wear. Because of all the protective gear, you can hit the opposing player much harder than you normally would. I mean, if I was going to run head first into a brick wall, my brain would stop me from going full force. But if I had on a helmet with lots of padding, I would feel more at ease with running into a brick wall as hard as I could. This is where football gets its appeal. It's violent. 300-pound powerful men running headfirst into each other. And there are injuries, of course. Lots of concussions, dislocated limbs, snapped knees. Oh, it's so fun to watch. But every once in a while, the game is not that fun to watch. This week on Monday Night Football, the Buffalo Bills were playing the Cincinnati Bengals when in the first quarter, a defensive player, Damar Hamlin, did a routine tackle on the guy carrying the football. That's the game. Nothing really special or odd about it. However, the Bengals guy ran straight into the chest of Damar. Damar brought the guy down to the ground in a successful tackle. He jumped right up to his feet, just like we expected him to. However, just after that, his body went limp, and he fell to the ground. His heart had stopped, and he was no longer breathing. Now, just to be clear, Damar is a young athlete with a perfect physique, not like some of these giant, fat front linemen. So his heart did not give up because he's fat or out of shape. It turns out he was hit in the right place at the right time. You know, if you watch your heart on a monitor, the line bounces up and down. When it hits the top, that's exactly when he got hit. And the blow was directly over the heart. This sent his heart into an arrhythmia to the point where it could not correct itself. The medics rushed in and started CPR, basically pumping the blood through the body because the heart could not. After 9 minutes, they were able to restart the heart, and he was taken away in an ambulance. He's still alive, but in critical condition at the hospital. Now, when most people go into this type of cardiac arrest, they do not survive, or if they do, the lack of blood to the brain can cause long-term injuries. Many times they will induce a coma so that the brain will have a chance to rest. But if there is unconsciousness after 96 hours after the attack, then there is most likely going to be major damage to the body. Thank goodness this did not happen. Damar did wake up, and he is on the road to a recovery. He tweeted, "This will make me stronger. Keep praying for me." He's still in critical condition. However, the respirator has been removed, and he is now breathing on his own. I'm glad to hear he is doing well. However, I have to ask the question, do we need sports like this? An expert said of this injury, there is no pad, no gear that would have stopped this from happening. This is the nature of the game. This is a game where more retire from injury than of old age. This was a weird injury for sure. Very, very rare that a player would die on the field from this. Usually it comes later in life when there is a long history of concussions, back cracks, chest blows. They all will come back to haunt them later. But still, we need the entertainment. And these guys do get paid well. Just a player never knows when he goes out on that field if he will come running off at the end of the game or be carried off somewhere in the middle. This is Eric Lecain here on the World News Jam. Okay, there was a somewhat funny story that happened this week. You know ฎ Thunberg, right? She's the teenager who scolded all the world leaders at the UN a few years back for being basically ignoring man-made climate change. Well, since then, she has, of course, amassed a huge following of people across the world. To many, she is the hope for the world as far as the next generation of influencers. However, not everyone likes Greta. There are those haters in the world that will go after anyone that is trying to make the world a better place. And one of those people is this guy named Andrew Tate. He's one of those guys that got himself on a reality show, Big Brother, and have used that short time in the spotlight to become an online sensation. Well, kind of. First of all, he is an accomplished kickboxer, but his real claim to fame is from his media posts in which he sometimes refers to married women as the property of their husbands. In explaining feminism, Tate says that women should shut the F up and have kids, sit at home, be quiet, and make coffee. Anyway, doesn't take long to really see what kind of guy this is. So anyway, he decided that it would be funny to go after ฎ Thunberg. So he sent out a tweet that said, "Hello, at ฎ Thunberg. I have 33 cars. My Bugatti has a W16 8.0 lead quad turbo. My two Ferrari 812 Capinzos have 6.5 liter V12s. Please provide me your email address so I can send a complete list of my car collection and their respective enormous emissions." Obviously trying to engage the famous teenager in a tweet battle. Well, you don't want to get in a battle with Greta, someone who puts world leaders to shame. So she responded in what very well could be the biggest burn ever on Twitter. Yes, please do enlighten me. Email me at smalldick@getalife.com. This has become the 7th most liked tweet in Twitter history. It also made Andrew Tate a household name, but only because now he seems to have a small DICK. He quickly became one of the most hated people on the planet Earth. But the cross-tweeting did not end there. Andrew decided, not very smartly, to make a video response to Greta. There he's wearing a robe and smoking a cigar and doing his usual stick. But in the video, he gets some pizzas. And you can clearly see the name of the pizza company on the box. The boxes in which he said he will not recycle. The pizza place is in Romania. It turns out Andrew Tate is wanted in Romania on human trafficking and rape charges. Allegedly, he and his brother started a company in which they would lure women by making them believe they were finding true love, but would then transport them to live in houses where they were under constant surveillance and forced to act in porn videos under threats of violence. Remember, we are in Romania. They also had a business in which 75 women were paid to talk to men at $4 a minute. But of course, Tate would pocket most of the money himself. You get the picture. Now, it's unclear whether the police saw the pizza boxes and tracked the deliveries to their address. However, soon after the video, the police raided his residence there. They confiscated his car collection and placed him under arrest. Now, Greta, of course, could not hold back and tweeted, "This is what happens when you don't recycle your pizza boxes." But here's the super ironic part to all this. Last year, Romanian authorities were urged to effectively prosecute human traffickers by the group named Greta, also known as the Group of Experts on Action Against Trafficking in Human Beings. Anyway, this guy Andrew Tate could very well end up going to prison in Romania and having all his possessions and bank accounts seized, since the money he earned was by illegal means. And all because of a tweet. Sometimes you need to be careful when you're trying to stir up trouble with a Swedish teenager environmental activist. Just give me some advice to the Andrews of the world. Speaking of porn, remember when we were kids? Porn was just something we knew about. You actually never could see it. You just knew that it existed. It was only in theaters in which you had to be 18 to get into. And of course, even if you could get into the theater, it was just too embarrassing to go. Now, when I was really young, it was the ladies' underwear section of the Sears catalog. I kid you not. I was a kid, you know. We got one of those catalogs in the mail every year. It was right in the middle of that 500-page catalog. If you went to any houses with a young boy and you just let the Sears catalog just drop open, it would for sure always open right at the women's underwear section. Now, when you get a little older, somehow you're able to score a Playboy magazine. My first look was the Bo Derek issue. Bo Derek was an actress, movie when I was 10, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, that was it. Really wasn't much else as opposed to now. Now, there's nothing left up to the young boy's imagination. There is porn everywhere. You don't need to buy a magazine or a video. You don't need to even think about going to a sleazy theater anymore. Every kind of porn you would ever want is right at your fingertips online and in high definition. Now, in the Philippines, they supposedly have blocked many sites. However, there are so many sites. And if you want to see it, well, it's there somewhere. Doesn't really matter what your age is. I mean, many sites will say, are you 18? And what young boy clicks no to that question? Just like in the old days when you first see your first porn VHS tape. At the beginning, it says, don't watch this under penalty of law if you're under 18. Who at that point turns off the VHS? I can tell you no one. But finally now, someone thinks that they have found a way to beat this system. The great conservative religious Republican state of Louisiana has passed a new law this week that states that no one under the age of 18 may view porn in any kind of format. That includes any kind of website. In fact, state legislators are saying that any internet site that contains more than 33.3% porn is off limits to minors. According to one health professional speaking at the Capitol, pornography is destroying our children and they're getting unlimited access to it on the internet. And so if the pornographic companies aren't going to be responsible, we need to go ahead and hold them accountable. So Louisiana has enacted a new law this week. That is, someone, if you're on a porn site and you are not 18, then that site can be liable. In other words, if you go onto a site in that state, everyone must verify their age throughout the entire state of Louisiana with their Louisiana state ID or their driver's license. Now, of course, you are saying, hey, I want to watch naked women running on the beach, but I don't want a site to have a copy of my driver's license. They can later publish it. Well, they have a system that you can register for a wallet, Louisiana wallet, and then you use that wallet, which is private, and you can show that you are indeed 18. Now, if a site does not request the age verification and say the parent walks in on little Johnny watching porn, the parent can then sue the porn site in the state of Louisiana. The woman speaking at the Capitol went on to say that too much watching porn can lead to depression, ED, lack of motivation, fatigue. Can also be tied to human trafficking, sexual assault. Currently, there are legislations in Washington, D.C. right now that looks to implement something like this on a national level in the entire United States. So for all us kids in the 70s and 80s waiting for a new Sears catalog to arrive, now we have access to everything that we always dreamed of. Well, looks like we might have to register in order to be able to see anything on the web. Me personally, honestly, I'm all about free speech. And I think, for kids under 18, they should make it just as hard for them as it was for me growing up. I mean, come on. We need to let young boys have some kind of imagination. We just can't give them everything from the start. I don't know. This is Lecain here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and RJTV. In some health news, now the subject today is a very touchy one, very sensitive to many people. It's ED, or erectile dysfunction, which is estimated that 50% of all men between the ages of 40 and 70 experience. Now, does this mean that after 70, for some reason, it's going away? Well, I'm sure. However, they stopped counting over 70. But for men between 40 and 70, some scientists in China seem to have possibility found the answer. Now, Peyronie's disease, which is commonly caused by an injury during sex through life, it involves damage to the fibrous sheath of penile tissue known as the tunica albuginea that allows for maintaining the erection. Scar tissue called plaque can cause curved, painful erections or penis shortening. Nobody likes the sound of that. These Chinese researchers said that usher tissues from the body have been used to make patches to replace the damaged tunica albuginea, but those are sometimes rejected by the immune system. So instead, the research created an artificial tunica albuginea, or ATA, that mimics the elasticity or the natural tissue with a substance called hydrogel. Hydrogel not unlike the substance used in contact lenses, in case you didn't know. So what they did was they tested this in pigs, and the pigs, which had the same type of penile injuries. Now, how that pig got that injury, I assume it's similar to how humans might have gotten it. However, it turns out that a pig's wee-wee is very similar to humans. But in the paper published this week, they explained that this structural bionic design was tested and it is capable of rapid stiffening, high burst pressure. In any case, the results have been very successful as they have managed to patch the pig's penis and managed to achieve what they think is a full recovery to the point of reusing it. So they believe that ATA patches will lead to men with this problem making a full recovery. They also believe that this procedure could lead to fixing problems in the heart and the bladder. So pigs are once again taking one for the team and are being our guinea pigs so that we might continue keeping our manhood up to stuff, even to the age of 70, just not beyond. Just assuming that the pigs can also continue having relations, that is, of course, until they are transferred to the bacon aisle at the grocery store. Speaking of good uses for body parts, Megan Hess, a 46-year-old business owner in Colorado, is having some bad luck this week. She got into some serious trouble when her and her 69-year-old mother, Shirley, decided to expand their business. See, Megan is in the funeral home business, and even though that is a pretty good business because you always have clients, however, you know what is much better business? Selling body parts. Problem is that in the U.S., you cannot legally sell body parts. You can donate them to a hospital for transplant. However, you cannot sell them, but there is a catch here. You can sell things like heads and arms and spines for use in medical research and education, which is what Megan claimed that she did. However, if you're going to chop up grandma and sell her parts off to the local medical college, you need to have permission of the deceased family, which she did not. Now, of course, you're saying, wouldn't the family know that there was a part missing when they opened the casket? Well, they only ran this scheme when the body was being cremated. So, the family would pay $1,000 to have their loved one cremated. However, instead of burning the body, they would chop it up, bag it, and sell it. They usually were running a special that if you would just give them the body, there would be no charge for anything. But they were doing the scam even if the families did pay for the cremation. They estimate the illegal dissections were on around 590 bodies between 2016 and 2018. Many times they were fraudulently signed the donors' cards, giving them full power to chop and sell. During the trial, Megan said that they had done nothing bad and that she was being vilified as a witch and a monster. She said that instead she was a broken human being whose actions can be attributed to a traumatic brain injury she got back when she was 18. However, she did say she was sorry for stealing and selling the loved one's body parts. The surgical training companies that purchased the arms, legs, and heads and torsos said that they had no idea that they were buying parts that were stolen pre-cremation, and They said they used the parts for the intended study and not for resale. However, the 26 families that spoke at the trial did not hold back at all. One woman said, "Our sweet mother, they dismembered her, selling her shoulders, knees, and feet for profit. We don't even have a name for a crime this heinous." And well, the judge thought so too. This past week, during the sentence hearing, the judge gave Megan 20 years for the chop and sell scheme, and her mother got 15. The judge said, "This is the most emotionally draining case I have ever experienced on the bench." He also demanded that the two women be immediately sent to prison. Now, can you just imagine those two women wearing their plastic-covered overalls and holding a bone saw, saying, "Ooh, we just got a fresh one in"? Someone should give the Netflix horror department a call. We got time for one more story. I would like to squeeze into somewhat of our weird health stories this week. It's in the category of health technology. Now, people at Georgia Tech Research Institute announced last week that they have made a breakthrough in disease detection. In fact, it's being hailed as a milestone in artificial intelligence. The device is a sound analyzer that is attached to your toilet, and it can detect if you have diarrhea. Yes, it's the first ever diarrhea detector. The prototype that Georgia Tech presented was able to identify diarrhea 98% of the time in its tests. This was at a recent conference at the Acoustical Society of America there in Nashville. Now, when I think of the Acoustical Society, I think of a nice set of headphones. However, I guess it includes diarrhea detectors as well. They even added background noise, and it still was able to correct 96 times. It was able to find it correctly. Now, I'm sure you're saying, "But Eric, you don't need a detector. I can pretty much tell on my own that I have LBM." Maybe you can, but what about the rest of the world? They are saying that this device can and will save lives throughout the world. Cholera infects millions of people each year. It kills up to 143,000 a year. We know this from a story that we did about a new outbreak of cholera that is currently hitting multiple places in the world. Now, many of these infections could have been easily treated if we had just known the person had cholera. What the company suggests is to use the device in public toilets to be able to detect possible cholera outbreaks in certain poor areas. According to the project woman co-lead Mia Gotlin, who is an aerospace engineer, she said, "Cholera typically has more watery sounds to it. It can sound like a urination, and it doesn't have a lot of flatulent sounding notes. In general, however, if someone is having severe diarrhea and they are having a lot of it, such as in cholera, that it can be captured by the device and it will be recorded." You know, I wonder if while she was in school studying for aerospace engineering, she knew this would be her biggest accomplishment. But anyway, the idea of this device actually grew from COVID, in which they were actually trying at first to come up with a way to detect COVID in sewage. Now, they realized at the beginning that most people would be uncomfortable as having a video camera in the toilet. So the idea came up about creating an algorithm to discern certain sounds in the bathroom. They gathered up about 350 publicly available audio samples of bathroom sounds. They were able to take all those sounds and convert them into a spectrogram images. Special computer analyzed those sounds using a convolutional neural network, teaching itself how to identify the subtle similarities between general bathroom sounds and diarrhea sounds. This is more based on the tones of the sounds. For instance, it can quickly tell the difference between the sounds of something emanating from your hindquarters and the sound created from, let's say, blowing into your arm. Once they had the complete sound captured process, the AI learning process, and the diarrhea decoding algorithm, they loaded it into a Raspberry Pi, which, if you know what that is, it's a computer, roughly the size of a credit card, costs less than $50. They were also to create a plastic case for the computer board with a microphone connection, with lights. Green one for acquired signal. Red for positive diarrhea sounds detected. And an orange one for other sounds detected. It's very fast computer board. It takes around 10 seconds to record, which it converts to the spectrogram and feeds into the algorithm. The entire process only takes seconds. They already have a Wi-Fi version in the works that will send data to an outside source to be analyzed. So, we are finding out that artificial intelligence has many uses in the medical field. Maybe soon we will be able to tell if you're eating too much salt or sugar, or even what medicines you might need, all from the sounds coming out of your butt. This is Eric Lecain of the World News Jam, bringing you some of the most useful news of the week. However, we are out of time. So please join us again next week on DZRJ and RJTV for the World News Jam. Everyone be safe out there, and we will see you next week.